In late February of 1978, 5 men left their homes in Yuba City, California. For what was supposed to be a fun and simple evening, they were close friends, bonded by a shared love of basketball, and all participated on a team for adults with mild intellectual disabilities. That Friday evening, they drove north in a 1969 Mercury Montego to watch a college game at Chico State. It was a lively night. Their favorite team won, and the group was in high spirits. They had their own tournament the following day, a Special Olympics qualifying game they had practiced months for. If they won, they'd receive an all-expense paid trip to Los Angeles. They were excited, prepared, and focused. Everything in their lives suggested structure, routine, and anticipation. And then they disappeared. The 5 men were Gary Mathias, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Ted Weihart, and Jack Hoot. All of them lived at home under the care of family members. Most were considered slow learners, though they were high-functioning in daily life. Gary Mathias was a bit different. He had served in the U.S. Army, but was discharged after being diagnosed with schizophrenia. His condition had caused some disturbances in the past, but by 1978, he was stable, cooperative, medicated, and an integral part of the group. His parents said he had transformed, focused, social, with a strong bond to his teammates. The 5 of them were inseparable, each contributing to the other's confidence and happiness. That bond would make what happened next even more incomprehensible. When the men failed to return that night, their families immediately felt something was wrong. They hadn't gone to a party, hadn't stopped at a bar, hadn't changed plans, simply never came home. Their beds were untouched. The next morning, when they didn't show up for their big game, the alarm bells turned to panic. Within hours, police were notified, and a search was launched. Days passed with no trace. And then, on February 28th, the first and only clue appeared. The Mercury Montego was found abandoned on a lonely, unpaved road deep in the Sierra Nevada foothills, nearly 70 miles off course. The car was discovered near Rogers Cow Camp, high in the mountains of Plumas National Forest, where few people traveled in winter. The elevation was over 4,000 feet. Snowfall was thick. The road was rough, yet the car had no damage, no signs of a crash. It had been carefully parked off to the side, not recklessly abandoned. The keys were gone, the doors unlocked. But the vehicle still had gas, and was perfectly operable. Law enforcement was baffled. Why drive into the middle of nowhere after 10 p.m. in a snowstorm? Inside the car were snack wrappers and programs from the basketball game, proving they had made it there. But there were no signs of the men, no footprints around the vehicle, no signs of distress, no blood, no forced entry. It was like they had simply stepped out into the forest and vanished. Over the following weeks, the region was scoured by helicopters, search dogs, and teams on foot. The terrain was treacherous, steep hills, thick woods, and heavy snow. Nothing was found, not a piece of clothing, not a shoe print, nothing. The families grew desperate, the public confused. Rumors spread. People speculated they had gone up there to do drugs or to party, but their family members rejected this theory outright. None of the men used drugs. They weren't impulsive. They had made plans for the next day and were genuinely looking forward to the tournament. So what could have led 5 people, including men afraid of the cold and unfamiliar environments, to a remote forest in the middle of the night? A chilling report soon emerged. A man named Joseph Shans came forward to say that on the night of their disappearance, he had driven that same remote road and become stuck in the snow. He remained in his car for hours trying to keep warm, even suffering a mild heart attack. During the night, he claimed he saw a group of figures, possibly men, one perhaps a woman holding a baby, walking by with flashlights. He called for help, but they ignored him. He even saw vehicle headlights behind him at one point, then they disappeared. Shans eventually made it to a lodge to get help the next morning. His account was strange and unverified, but it offered a possible sighting, or a hallucination. It only made the mystery feel more surreal. As winter dragged on, the families were left with no answers and no bodies. And then spring came. In June, as the snow thawed, the case took a devastating turn. A group of weekend motorcyclists exploring an old forestry road found a trailer cabin belonging to the U.S. Forest Service. Deep in the woods, nearly 20 miles from the abandoned car. Inside, they made a horrifying discovery. Ted Weihar's body was lying on a bed inside the trailer, partially covered by 8 sheets. His feet were badly frostbitten, and he was emaciated, weighing just over 100 pounds. He had long facial hair, and his growth indicated he had been alive for nearly 3 months after the disappearance. He had survived the freezing wilderness, only to slowly starve and freeze to death, inside a building that had food, blankets, and heating. The trailer contained a locker full of army rations, enough food for months, some of which had been eaten, but much of it untouched. There was a propane heater unused and matches available. The windows were intact. The trailer wasn't destroyed or vandalized. Whoever had been there either didn't know how to use the equipment or had chosen not to. The most eerie part was the careful wrapping of Ted's body. Someone had covered him with military precision, an act of compassion or guilt or finality. Not far from the trailer, the bones of Jack Hoot were discovered, mostly scattered under leaves and brush. His shoes and pants were nearby. Autopsy results were inconclusive due to decomposition. Between the car and the trailer, the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were found. Their bodies had been partially consumed by animals lying off the trail, one on each side. Both had likely succumbed to exposure. Their cause of death was listed as hypothermia. And yet, there was no sign of the 5th man, Gary Mathias. His tennis shoes were in the trailer, but his body was never recovered. Many believe he lived for a time alongside Ted, perhaps venturing out for help, never to return. Some suspect he died farther into the forest, and his remains were simply never found. But others still believe he may have survived and walked away from it all. The absence of Gary Mathias opened a floodgate of theories. If he had a mental health break, could he have led the others into the mountains? Could he have been the last one alive? Had something happened between the men? Had they followed someone up that road? Perhaps someone they trusted only to be abandoned? The thing made sense. They had no survival training, yet they walked miles into the woods in the dark. Didn't break into a nearby cabin. They didn't start a fire, which couldn't return to the car, which could have saved them. Investigators were left with facts that defied logic. A functional car abandoned for no reason. Men walking deep into snow without gear. Supplies left untouched. Survival methods ignored. And a man who disappeared completely. The families were never satisfied with the investigation. They insisted their sons wouldn't have chosen to go into the woods willingly. Something, or someone, had led them there. But no suspect was ever named. No motive was uncovered. No crime was proven. The story faded from national headlines, but it never went away. Even now, over 4 decades later, the Yuba County Five case is studied by detectives, journalists, and internet sleuths as one of the most bizarre, haunting disappearances in American history. It wasn't a simple accident. It wasn't just bad luck. It was something else. Something colder, stranger, more enduring. 5 men drove into the night. 4 died alone in the snow. 1 vanished, and no one has ever been able to say why.